So we know it takes far less ignition energy to trigger a flower explosion compared to a coal dust explosion, but several of you pointed out that you think that the coal dust explosion is capable of inflicting more damage. So let's talk about it. Because coal dust is responsible for far more deaths than flower, but not for the reasons you're thinking. You see, when we look at how much damage an explosion is going to cause, we look at two criteria. We look at the Pmax, the maximum pressure that will be generated by the explosion, and we look at KST, and that is the rate of pressure rise. The faster the pressure rises, the less time we have to ventilate, which means the higher pressure, total pressures we're going to get inside a fixed geometry like a silo or a coal mine. So flour can actually explode just as hard as coal dust. When we look at the Pmax for coal dust, it's between 5 and 10 bar, whereas flour is between 6 and 8 bar. And when we look at their KST values, the rate of pressure rise, we're usually looking at 30 to 220 bar meters per second for coal and 75 to 200 bar meters per second for flour. So again, they're nearly identical, very similar amounts of damage. What it comes down to is geometry and confinement. We have coal dust explosions in mine shafts where there's nowhere to ventilate that extra pressure. And what happens is it causes structural instability in the mine, which can cause rock falls, collapses of the mine tunnel, and methane gas, which is flammable, tends to run in coal seams. So once we already have an explosion going on, if we have a release of methane gas, we get a synergistic explosion between the coal dust and the methane gas. And because there's nowhere to ventilate it, all of the people in the coal mine are in the path of the explosion. There's very few opportunities to get out of the path of that explosion. So it's very deadly. Whereas in a grain silo or in a building that's processing flour, typically we see the opportunity for the pressure to vent in more directions, in all directions. Once the grain silo catastrophically fails, we can now ventilate pressure in a 360-degree bubble just about. And that allows us to dissipate the pressure much, much faster. However, flour explosions are still very deadly, but coal dust is still winning the race on killing more people. It's kind of a macabre way of putting it. And that is why flour is more explosive than coal dust. And now you know, and if you want more information about it, you can go and listen to our episode on the dual disasters that occurred in the Dawson mine in New Mexico. It's out on Crime to Burn right now, wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. And coming on Monday, we're bringing you a completely new case, and this time we're turning it back to arson. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss Monday's new episode.